was how departments could achieve compliance with the FBI's new data collection standards. So, frankly, collecting information for police departments right now, it's broken. It's a broken process. There are a lot of issues why police departments can't collect the data that they really need to. The main one is that the FBI has prescribed a data standard for collecting all this information that was written up about 85 years ago. It's called Universal Crime Reporting, and it actually only collects 7 different offenses for a police department. So when the FBI came together in 1930, they said, we want to understand how different departments are dealing with crime and what the nationwide picture of crime looks like, but we're only going to capture it for these 7 different offenses. So obviously that's one hugely inherent issue to this whole process. But in 1989, they came together and they said, In 1989, they came together and said, it's time to revamp how we collect information across all these different police departments. We want to expand to the National Incident-Based Reporting System, also known as NIBRS, getting a lot of information across all these different police departments. There were 3 other really important improvements to this new data collection standard that they put together. The first one was that it lacked a hierarchy rule. So for the old data collection standard, and this continues to boggle our minds and police departments' minds, but if 2 crimes were committed together at the same time, murder and larceny, only the most serious crime would be counted. So you could imagine that across the nation, there was a total lack of fidelity into what crimes were actually happening, and all of that data was actually thrown out. So there's no hierarchy rule. All crimes for all incidents are collected in this new reporting standard. Secondly, they've revised the information that they collect per offense to include things like computer crimes, to include things like synthetic drug crimes, things that wouldn't necessarily have been around in 1930, but do exist in modern day today. Finally, for number 3, they've expanded the requirements for victim, offender, and property information. So for victims, you can now capture whether that victim was a police officer. That's obviously super important. On top of that, you can collect more information about offenders in general. And for property, you can collect things like serial numbers. Again, this stuff sounds obvious, but it's only coming into modern day technology and data tracking now. So for that property, you could understand that if a gun was used in offense A, then offense B, then found in some vehicle a few months later. So again, giving police departments a much more holistic assessment of what kind of crime is happening in their jurisdiction and around the U.S. So this is a quote from James Comey, director of the FBI, covering kind of the stuff that we're talking about today. How can we address a rise in violent crime without good information? Without information, every single conversation in this country about policing and about reform and about justice is uninformed. And I think that really captures the heart and the spirit of what the FBI is trying to do. They really need to understand what the criminal element is doing in the U.S. so they can actually make sure they're measuring things and can move the needle to improve it. So why am I here today talking on February 28th of 2017, why this is important? The FBI has finally made the commitment to say, okay, all these police departments are on this old reporting standard. We are moving to NIBRS in 2021. That is the big push. That's the big change. They're gathering all of these police departments together to make sure that everybody is using the same application in terms of how to collect all of this data so they can communicate and translate all of that information between these different departments. They have a vision, 4 different tenets in this vision for how they want to implement this new crime collection standard. The first one being reliability. So they want to make sure that the entire nation is using the same thing. I think that's pretty obvious why that's incredible and would be a huge step forward. 2, they really care about accuracy. So they want to make sure that they have a comprehensive picture of crime. They want to make sure that data isn't being thrown out. They want to make sure that they're collecting information about drugs and offenders and how this crime is changing day to day, month to month, and across different elements. On top of that, they want to make sure that accessibility is really critical to the push that they're making in the next 4 years. They want to make sure that for comparable jurisdictions, for 2 urban environments, for 2 suburban environments, for 2 environments of the same population size, they can actually talk in the same types of language about what kind of crime is happening in those 2 different jurisdictions. And then finally, timeliness is huge. They want to make sure that the great data that they have, this new robust, comprehensive data, they can access really quickly and really efficiently. So that is what the FBI looks to accomplish in the next 4 years. So in order to make this move, it's really kind of a silver bullet solution for these police departments. It doesn't require hiring 10 or 20 or 30 new records personnel. It doesn't require a ton of technical analysis from these police departments' IT departments to build new applications and make this push forward. All it requires is to make sure that they have applications that are capable of collecting this information, specifically to make sure that their records management systems can collect this data that the FBI wants them to collect. That's it. It's really that simple. So what is a records management system? It's basically the operating system of record, if you will, for a police department. If a police officer responds to a homicide, a sexual assault, a cat stuck up in a tree, anything like that, anything they deal with every single day, they have to write some sort of report about it. From those reports, they collect a lot of really critical, interesting data, and that's how they can make their assessments on how they need to reallocate resources and understand different things about what's happening in their jurisdiction. Unfortunately, most records management systems aren't designed for an easy transition. Police departments, they try their hardest and they want to do the absolute best that they can, but unfortunately the state of the market right now just prevents police departments from getting access to the cool technology that you feel like you have on your phone, or the cool technology that you're working with on the internet every single day. So these existing vendors and these existing incumbents in the market, they often charge huge upfront costs. The implementation times take forever. Honestly, there are some implementations that have happened at bigger departments in the U.S. that are on the order of years. So literally 2, 3, 4 years it's taken to roll out these new applications. Customer support and training is never optimal for some of these systems. It actually takes 3 or 5 days to train a user. For a police department, when you're trying to keep police officers out in the field protecting neighborhoods, this really is not optimal. Finally, complex data sharing doesn't exist in any way, shape, or form. Unfortunately, criminals don't stop at a jurisdictional line or the border or the state border to commit a crime to make it easy for the police department to track them, understand what they're doing. So it's really important that different jurisdictions and different departments can communicate using the same infrastructure and information to work together to actually fight this crime. And then finally, with a lot of these on-premise implementations that we've seen, downtime is frequent. So not only are police officers using an application that's a little bit behind, they're often going back to writing it in a paper report. So there's more implementation hurdles if you haven't already guessed at that. Configuring these records management applications is actually pretty complicated. And unfortunately, while the FBI has this wonderful technical spec for what has to be collected per police department, most vendors, for some reason or other, have a different interpretation of what that means. Does that mean that a records admin just combs through all of this data and hand counts all of the NIBRS information, or should you actually have an application that's kind of like TurboTax and is asking you, okay, for this particular homicide, was there a weapon involved, and making it much easier for the user. On top of that, there's not really a standard way to share this information amongst departments. There's a standard way to send it to the FBI, but not amongst departments. And then while getting data into the system is actually not that easy, getting it out of the application is much more difficult. So many times police departments have trouble querying data from the application, so they can say there's been this trend, there's been this hotspot of crime or hotspot of burglaries in this particular district or area. We should actually allocate resources in that direction. Continually, records personnel, and at no fault of their own, kind of at the fault of the existing technology they have, are left to kind of be the backstop to collecting all this either UCR or NIBRS information. So instead of the applications they're using to collect the information 100%, they have to spend a ton of time kind of hand parsing all of the information and manually counting and checking all of these statistics, which is just a bad allocation of their time. And by extension, a lot of crime analysis staff that we've seen in a lot of different departments, instead of figuring out, okay, there's a hotspot here, this is where we predict that there's going to be a crime wave over August or July or something like that, they often become data clerks and get looped into this huge problem of just massaging the data and making sure that it fits the old, outmoded standards that exist. So, again, what can the U.S. do? Being early part of 2017, this is a great opportunity to get on a low-risk path to moving to NIBRS compliance for all these different police departments by 2021. Again, James Comey has mandated that 2021 is the year where the FBI is making the entire U.S. make the switch. So 4 years is plenty of time to actually start thinking about this and have a solution in place. So first, what are some best practices in other states? What are other states doing to understand how they can move to NIBRS and how they can move to these new data collection standards? So the first thing, it's important that departments work with vendors that are willing to partner with them to make sure that the transition from old data collection standards to NIBRS, to the FBI, to what the FBI is requiring, it's a good partnership and that they're willing to work together. Two, A lot of states have actually provided kind of a state-managed institution to collect all of this information. For Washington, D.C., that's actually a great example. The Metropolitan Police Department out there manages all of the records management and administration for the 40-plus agencies out there that have arrest powers. So for Park Police, Capitol Police, Secret Service Police, there's actually one central hub that manages all of this, makes sure that the FBI is getting the data that they need, and all of these other departments can kind of just ride along on that and not have to worry too much about hiring all these additional record staffs. It's all outsourced to one singular department. 3, using some sort of FBI national data collection repository to check all of this information. So a few states now have actually built kind of a web portal or website where departments can submit information to this website, and that website will actually do a secondary check to make sure that it's in the right format and has collected all of the information that needs to go to the FBI. So again, these states are kind of putting in this secondary layer to make sure that their departments have exactly what they need. 4th, legislation supporting the collection and submission of NIBRS and all of this crime data is really important. And again, this isn't so much mandating that NIBRS is the new category of data collection that's coming out in 2021. It's more that are there resources available to help smooth the transition for these different departments, grants and that type of thing to say, okay, we're moving from this old standard, let's make it as frictionless as possible for everybody to collect the data that they do need. And then finally, there's a lot of federal grant programs out there. There's one called NCSX, which is directly a grant program from the FBI to help departments all across the nation move to NIBRS. So one of the last 2 things that I'll leave you guys with is 5 questions that you can ask your local law enforcement agencies to help understand from your perspective, how are they going through the transition, and to actually help them get thinking about what is the transition going to be like and what do they need to do to make sure it's smooth when they hit 2021. So the first thing, is your records management system automated? Does that mean, are you just filling out a PDF report online, or are you actually filling out some usable application that's asking you for all of the material that it needs so the submission is automatic at the very end of the whole process? 2, does your records management submission, or what does your records management application support the old data collection standard and the new data collection standard? There's going to be a transition for departments that are on UCR. It's easy to use UCR, and then once 2021 hits, you can smoothly transition right into NIBRS. So that's a really critical feature that we see. 3, can you generate these NIBRS data collection reports right out of the application? Do you need a team of 10 or 15 records personnel actually manually counting all these statistics, or can you click with one button a report that will come out automatically from the application? That's really important to us as well. 4th, will your records management vendor charge you to upgrade your existing application to something that's NIBRS compliant or to reconfigure your existing one? Are they going to say, we're going to charge you thousands and thousands of millions of dollars to open up this new module to enable these new features, or is that something that's just included in the application? Again, that's a really critical point for all these different departments, especially as there's these pension squeezes and everything like that. And then finally, are you working with neighboring jurisdictions to share NIBRS data? So the final thing that I'll leave you guys with is one more quote from James Comey. He says, "We need to remember that this just isn't data. These are lives, these are families. These are not just complex criminal issues, they are complex social issues as old as our country. We need better information to make better decisions. We need everyone working together to find solutions, armed with facts." So I really appreciate Chairman Worsley and the rest of the committee giving me the opportunity to talk to you guys today. Hopefully this has been kind of instructive in what's happening over the next 4 years, what the FBI is going to be demanding, and a few really simple, again, almost silver bullets in the way that police departments can actually make this transition really smoothly and really easily. So again, thank you very much, and let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I appreciate the time. Thank you.